Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking your time out of your busy afternoons or mornings, depending where you are, to join us today. I'm Dr. Nikki Hudson, and I'm the Sustainability Solutions Market Leader at Bureau Veritas for UK. Today's webinar for Net Zero Unlocked, the Future of Supply Chain Decarbonisation, is part of our expert-led series, which is designed to support organisations navigating the complex landscape of sustainability and climate action. Scope 3 emissions can represent over 90% of an organisation's carbon footprint, yet they still remain the most challenging to measure and also to reduce. With increasing regulatory expectations and stakeholder pressure, the need for credible, scalable decarbonisation solutions has never been greater. Hopefully you'll all agree. And I'm glad that my screen's working too. So before we begin, I just want to run through some quick housekeeping. My colleagues Rhiannon and Rebecca, who I will introduce momentarily, will be presenting for around 45 minutes. We should have around 15 minutes for Q&A at the end, so we do encourage you to drop your questions in the chat function or to contact us directly after. We'll try and get through as many of those as we can in the session, but if not, please do feel free to reach out to us. Now, this session will be recorded and the recording will be shared with you all afterwards. But please do use the chat function and we will try and engage and throughout the presentation today. So, can all attendees please be on mute for the duration of this session, just to avoid any disruptions? And most importantly, we really hope that you enjoy this today and find it valuable. So, if I go to my colleagues, Rebecca and Rhiannon, I'm delighted to be joined by both of these two experts in supply chain decarbonisation and emissions management. Rhiannon is our global commercial lead for AITrack solutions with over 20 years of commercial leadership. She drives the global development of AITrack, enabling organisations to measure and manage their emissions across complex supply chains and making sure that the data within that is audit ready. Now, Rebecca Turner is our head of Net Zero Solutions. She brings over 2 decades of experience in Scope 3 measurement, supply chain engagement, and emissions reduction planning, supporting businesses at every stage of the net zero transition. But that's enough from me on this. We're going to get started today, and thank you everybody for joining once again. Very quickly, Bureau Veritas within UK and Ireland has a specific set of products and services in which we offer. In our ESG strategy and reporting services, we put sustainability at the heart of a company's strategies, promoting responsibility and transparency in an organisation's ESG performance. We really focus on trying to enable the transition to a low carbon economy while mitigating financial risk and creating value through our sustainable finance pillar as well. Our net zero solutions are specifically focused on climate and carbon, and we'll touch upon some of the elements such as Scope 3 today, but we really focus on empowering companies to achieve net zero by embedding decarbonisation at the heart of business strategy. And we achieve this through measuring, mitigating and monetising the impact of sustainable development through carbon, energy and climate solutions. In our product circularity and environment pillar, we do life cycle assessments. We also focus on optimising product life cycles for a circular economy by providing advisory support, whether that is waste or water stress testing, environmental management services support, and environmental legal register development as well. And underpinning all of this to ensure that we can demonstrate impact, we support organisations with independent ESG assurance to help meet those increasing expectations from shareholders and investors by providing that third-party verification on their claims. We really focus on trying to add value throughout everything we do by working directly with our stakeholders to ensure that they are able to meet their objectives and aspirations, that they can demonstrate impact, that we act as a critical friend along the way, So really, when it comes to operationalizing those action plans or addressing those targets, you're able to do that in a way which can be done transparently and also respond to your own stakeholder expectations. So the Scope 3 challenge, on to yourself, Rebecca.
Thank you very much, Nikki, and good afternoon, everyone. So today's webinar is about supply chain decarbonisation. So I'm just going to take a few slides now to put that in the context of emissions across your organisation more widely and talk a little bit about what some of the challenges are around measuring those emissions. So most of you will know that the Greenhouse Gas Protocol defines emissions into scopes 1, 2 and 3, with scopes 1 and 2 being your direct emissions from activities directly linked to you, such as burning gas in your boilers on site, and then scope 2 emissions around things like your electricity use. So where supply chain sits is in scope 3, and those are all the emissions across your value chain, both upstream and downstream. So example, if you were in manufacturer, you might have upstream scope 3 emissions associated with purchasing raw materials, and downstream scope 3 emissions associated with distributing your products when you produce them. There's a huge range of different scope 3 emissions. In fact, the Greenhouse Gas Protocol defines 15 different categories. They can make up typically around 70% of your overall emissions across all scopes, but we do have instances where it can be up to 99% of your total footprint. So they're really significant, really important when it comes to decarbonisation, and particularly around net zero. With the number of categories and the amount of different data involved, there come a wide range of challenges, and I'll talk a little bit about those on the next slide. So here immediately we can see some of the challenges. There can be really complicated supply chains feeding into a business's operations. We know that many companies face huge amounts of challenges with scope 3 data. So you can see here on the screen, organisations that ask for data from their suppliers receive information back from around 26% on average. We can see here that 45% of companies in their CDP reports didn't report at all on the most material scope 3 categories. So what this tells us is that it is a real challenge for everybody. So if this is something you're struggling with, you are not alone. There are some key issues. One of them is obtaining the data in the first place. So I've already mentioned all those different scope 3 categories. There's a huge volume of data, a huge variety of data, and often an enormous supply chain or other types of organisation that may be supporting you to contact to obtain it. When you do obtain that data, often it can be hard to know, can you actually trust it? A number of the organisations supplying it may just give you a number. You don't necessarily know where it's come from, how they've worked it out. So the validity and credibility of that data can be a real problem as well. Lastly, a lot of the data used in scope 3 accounting, a lot of the information that might get passed to you through your supply chain is actually based on spend data. This is very volatile. You can see how that can fluctuate dramatically year on year, not necessarily directly linked to emissions, and that can make it really difficult when you're looking at targeting emissions reductions and making investments. If we can go on to the next slide, please. Thank you very much. What we've got in the market at the moment, and what many of you will have seen, is a large range of corporate footprinting tools. So those are looking at your organisational emissions. Those are the kind of emissions that you might be reporting under mandatory schemes at the moment or in your annual report. And then a range of tools that look at carbon footprints associated with products. The gap that we're seeing in the market at the moment is the ability to sort of bring those two things together to create a footprint that encompasses all of those emissions, is really clear and transparent, so you can see what data has gone in and what data is coming out, where that's all come from, and is fully complete. So I'm going to hand back now to Rhiannon, who's going to talk a little bit about what we can do around some of those challenges.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Nikki, and good afternoon to all of you. Yeah, so as Rebecca just explained, lots of challenges when it comes to scope 3, and then the pressure that Nikki mentioned around, you know, from regulators, from investors, from consumers. It makes measuring our emissions today actually quite complicated. It's difficult to know where to start. We don't really necessarily know how to prioritize things to get to our decarbonisation targets. So on the next few slides, what I'm going to do is just to walk you through an approach that we recommend to companies, which is an approach that should, you know, enable you to define an actionable, reachable, but also economically viable decarbonation strategy. So, first key point to bear in mind when you're building your GHG inventory is that essentially building it is going to define how actionable your decarbonation strategy is going to be. And that is, you know, really the starting point. Here on this slide, we've set out basically 4 key steps that we see when building your inventory that we feel you should follow to get to a really, as I mentioned, actionable decarbonation strategy. So first of all is from the get-go, we recommend using an activity-based approach, okay? An activity-based approach is going to give you a lot more granularity and a lot more visibility on what's going on in your supply chain beyond your tier 1 suppliers. Okay, and that can be really leveraged from data that you already have in your systems, activity data, for example, bills of material or energy data, and then any gaps would be filled then, we would recommend by the spend-based modelling. So first things first, activity-based approach. Secondly, ensure that you're building repeatable processes. So maximizing the amount of automation that you're using to develop scalable LCA. This is going to ensure that you have got that consistency in your inventory year on year, because we know, you know, lots of things can change from one year to the next. Having those repeatable processes is going to help you have that consistency and also make things much quicker when it comes to calculating your inventory year on year. The granularity that I mentioned that this approach will allow you to have is then going to help you define a really granular strategy. So you're going to be able to, with this approach, analyze the emissions and any intervention projects that you have in place on your supply chain at actionable points. So you'll really be able to drill down to specific materials, specific energy sources, specific components within your products, and intervene where it matters, where your hotspots are, your emissions hotspots. And that in turn will help you on your continuous improvement journey. So having that granularity that activity-based modelling allows you will mean that you can have really targeted discussions and targeted engagement with your suppliers. So those suppliers within your supply chain that are the biggest contributors to your emissions, you'll be able to go and speak to, concentrate your efforts on speaking to those suppliers instead of going out and trying to approach everyone within your supply chain. It'll also enable you to refine your activity-based data. So again, by understanding which of your suppliers are the biggest contributors to your emissions, you'll be able to go and ask them for their activity data. You'll be able to ask them for the primary data that then you can feed back into your inventory to continually improve it and get more and more granular results. So an example of the activity-based approach you can see here. So as I said, the whole advantage of this approach is to have that granularity and be able to identify your emissions hotspots. So on this example, which is a real life example of one of our customers, you have here basically a server rack configuration. Okay. And thanks to the activity-based approach, the customer was able to identify one component of that server configuration that actually represented 70% of the emissions. Now, you've got to imagine that in server configurations, there's about 70,000 components. So being able to identify that one type of component, which is the biggest contributor to the emissions, was very helpful, and also allowed the client to have those targeted discussions with the supplier. On the next example, you have, on the next slide, thanks, Nikki. So on the next example, you have here a similar visual example of a company within the textile industry. So here we can see that the level of granularity, being able to drill down onto specific geographic locations, onto specific supplier facilities, again helping to have those targeted discussions. The level of granularity that we have as well with this approach is also going to help you for specific regulatory requirements. So, for example, within the textile industry, it would help support requirements such as PEF or ESPR, which a spend-based approach wouldn't necessarily have. Okay. So that's the approach that we're recommending, and so now the question is, okay, so how can Bureau Veritas help with this approach? And this is where I'm going to jump into the presentation of our solution, which is called AITrack. So AITrack Solutions, what is AITrack Solutions? It's basically a combination of three key elements. You've got in there sustainability data, software, and also consulting solutions. And the objective of AITrack really is to help companies, multinational companies with complex supply chains, to measure and reduce their environmental impact across the value chain. So we're looking not only at carbon, but we're looking at other environmental factors such as biodiversity or water use or land use. And you have here the four main capabilities of AITrack, which I will go into more detail on the next slides. But just to give you an overview, we provide corporate footprinting solutions, so very, very granular corporate footprinting because we use an activity-based approach. We provide product footprinting at scale. So in a few months, you can have product footprints for all of the products in your portfolio. So hundreds or even thousands of products in quite a short space of time. The two also are completely integrated, completely aligned. We're essentially using the same data to calculate both, which means that everything is on the same platform, and you won't be using two separate tools to do the two separate footprints. Once we have that as the basis, we're able also to support with our solution on mitigation strategy. So helping companies to define and to manage their decarbonisation strategy. And then lastly, the supply chain engagement. So again, helping and supporting to have those targeted discussions with the suppliers that count the most on your value chain. So corporate footprinting, as I said here, we are on a very granular vision of corporate footprinting. The objective really being to allow companies to identify their emission sources and prioritise their decarbonisation efforts. So we are able to provide scopes 1, 2, and 3 in our reports. Our inventories are compliant with GHG protocol and ISO 14064. And they're basically built using an aggregation of product LCA to build the corporate footprint. We're able, therefore, to help companies track against their science-based targets. We even have consultants in the team that have helped in the past companies define their science-based targets. And then on the right-hand side there of the slide, you can see an example of what we call our audit-ready reports. So we're able to provide reports that are aligned to global frameworks such as CSRD or CDP, which basically lay out in complete transparency how we've calculated the emissions. So right from the data source when we received it through to the methodologies that we used to calculate the emissions. So you have that available for any external audit companies that may come in to audit your sustainability reports. Product footprinting. So here the goal, the objective is really to help companies master those client requests. We're always receiving a lot of different requests from our clients for product footprints, and it's not always easy to manage. So helping companies to be able to do that, but also meet the regulatory requirements that I mentioned on the previous slides. So here it's really identifying the hotspots, and that we can drill right down to specific facilities, specific components, specific materials. And we also have, the tool is very dynamic. So we're actually able to, or the companies that use our tool can simulate the impact of different scenarios on the emissions. For example, you want to switch out one component for another, or you want to look and see what would happen if you change one of your energy sources, for example. You can do that within the tool, and it will calculate how much CO2 equivalent savings you would have. And then lastly, on the product side, really enabling that competitive advantage. So by having product footprints for all of the products in your portfolio within just a few months, you will be able to potentially as well use those to show to your clients the environmental impact of your products, and compare that to your competition and say, okay, you're better off buying my product because I'm much better positioned from an environmental aspect than somebody else. So as I mentioned, once we've got the corporate and the product footprints, we can then move on to mitigation strategy. So really supporting companies to identify the most profitable ways to meet sustainability goals. We all have a number of multiple intervention projects that we may have identified along the supply chain. And here the goal of this tool is really to help companies measure how those intervention projects are going to help them meet their targets. So it really is simulating the impact of each of those projects on the emissions to see how they help you reach your goals. We also have dynamic marginal abatement cost curves integrated into the solution, again, which are there to help you maximize your investments. Make sure that when you are using your budget, that you are investing in the projects that are going to have the most impact on your emissions. And then lastly, the supply chain engagement. So here it's really important as well to convey how AITrack fits into the wider Bureau Veritas solutions. We can actually, because we have 85,000 people on the ground, 140 country presence. We are able to not only help you, thanks to AITrack, with the emissions calculations, but we can actually even send people onto the ground to collect data, to verify data, which we can then feed into the AITrack tool. And we also have experts available within the network that could essentially help with any intervention projects that you may have identified, implementation of those intervention projects. So it really is a global value proposition that can support companies throughout the whole of the supply chain. So why AITrack? I know probably lots of you have listened to a lot of these presentations. We said earlier there are a lot of tools out there today that are being used. And here just wanted to lay out, what we feel makes us stand out from other tools out there. You can see on this slide a number of client logos, so we're very proud to work with some of the world's largest brands on their scope 3 and their product footprinting. Very present in the textile and apparel industry, food and ag, and tech. And what we're very proud of is, once companies start working with us, they normally stay with us. We're proud to say we've got 100% client retention, and that for a number of reasons. So first of all, the technology behind the solution. We have today, and we're using the industry's largest LCA activity database. So we have a database that covers today just over 500,000 activities. So we have that working in the background. We do use artificial intelligence to enhance the data mapping. It's there to help us and support us. It's not at all 100% generated by AI because we have our consultants in the background. And then we have very advanced software systems. We have our team of consultants. So as I said before, we're not talking here just about a software. We're also talking about consultants and industry experts. So we provide very customized services, and we have LCN sustainability experts that are really specific to certain geographies and certain industries. So they're able to really understand what's going on and get into the nitty-gritty of the LCA models that we're developing. And then lastly, there's the global support that Bureau Veritas can offer that I mentioned earlier, with all of the people that we have on the field to support. So that's for AITrack. I'm going to move now on to some case studies just to give you a bit of a better idea of some real projects that we've put into place with two big clients. And I think, just to say, you'll see on both of them that we really are on a journey with our clients, and it's a passionate journey that we go on, and we work with them and have worked with them historically for a certain number of years now. So example here of a client within the technology sector. We started out with this client doing consulting. So basically supporting them on CDP, supporting them on their corporate GHG inventory, looking at climate risk, mitigation assessment. So for 3 years we were consulting. We implemented AITrack in 2020. And what's interesting here, and what's the case with most of our clients, is when we implement AITrack, we always start with limited data. We know that clients don't have very much data. It's not a problem. We really will start where the client is in terms of amount of data. So we started here with that limited data, and we customized our LCA models to match the amount of data and the granularity of the data that was available. So in those first couple of years, we were able to model 30,000 products for this client. And for the first time, they really did have that visibility on what was going on within the supply chain. From 2023 onwards, that's where we really start, doing the continuous improvement and enhancing what we're doing. So it's a question of improving the data. So by having those targeted engagements with the suppliers that matter, you can go and collect the primary data and feed it back into the system to have even more granular results. So we improved client data. We expanded our AITrack database, and we were able to give them much more granular life cycle assessments. So we went from 30,000 products being modelled to 90,000 products. And we were able also to cut the data processing time. So as the years go on, we get quicker and quicker, thanks to the repeatable processes that we've set up in the background. And we're still going, so we're still expanding. We're starting now to work on strategy modeling, thanks to our mitigation strategy module, and we continue to deliver faster and faster, allowing the client really to have some significant savings when it comes to product carbon footprinting at scale. And then on the next and final slide from me, we have an example here of one of the leaders in the food and ag industry. So again, we were able to start with this client back in 2016 on consulting. And it's actually with this client during our consulting phase that we identified the gap in the market with regards to the software, and it was there we actually developed AITrack. We implemented it with this client in 2019, and it was deployed straight away on all of their food products, so purchased and sold, with very granular LCA modelling. We started working with them on TCFD climate risk analysis and also strategy. So in those first few years, 10,000 products modelled, and again, for the first time, really clear visibility into the supply chain impacts. And then we moved on, really supporting them on a flag compliant corporate inventory. We supported them on the submission of new SBTi targets, which were approved and adopted. And again, on this example, just every year, cutting down the time taken for the data processing. So now for this client, actually, we're able to process the data in several days, even hours for certain products. And since we've also introduced quarterly automated processing of supply chain data, so we're able to provide them quarterly reports. So two concrete examples that show, as I said, the journey that we're on. And then just four really key takeaways here for me with regards to the AITrack solution. So the fact that we can, with the solution, deliver those integrated corporate and product footprints across hundreds or thousands of products in a few months. We're able to identify those hotspots and really down to a very, very detailed level of granularity. Supporting companies on their mitigation strategy and helping them verify and be sure that the progress that they're making towards their targets is measurable. And then the final part around the competitive advantage. So having those product level footprints at scale, enabling you to show your clients how competitive you are when it comes to environmental impacts. So that's it from me.
Thanks very much, Rhiannon and Rebecca, for those excellent insights. And I think, outside of the detail of what you presented here, and we hope that the time we've spent with clients from the process from consultancy through to the development work with us in AITrack to this present day shows that, this is a tried and tested tool alongside with our sector and specific market experts. We've had quite a few questions come through actually, so I'm going to just try and get through as many of these as possible. But I first would like to ask Rebecca, can you explain the key differences between corporate and product carbon footprints?
Sure, thanks, Nikki. So a corporate footprint is basically where an organisation is recording and reporting its own emissions, usually over the course of a 12-month period. So that's normally aligned with a financial reporting year, and that will be across scopes 1, 2, and 3. For a product footprint, we're looking at an individual product. So say, a plastic bottle, for example, and we're looking across the entire life cycle of that product from its creation to its disposal at the end of its life. So whereas for a corporate footprint, you will have an output that is a certain number of tons of CO2 equivalent, or you may have that aligned against an intensity metric, so CO2 per employee. For a product footprint, you'd actually be looking at a functional unit. So you'd be looking at the emissions for a kilogram of something or that one plastic bottle. And I think those are the main differences to explain.
Thank you very much for that. I actually have another one, so I'll just keep you for another moment if that's okay.
Right.
Can you still use spend-based data for scope 3 calculations, or is supplier-specific data now essential?
So yes, you absolutely can still use spend-based data. There are some unreliabilities associated with it, as I explained earlier, but as a starting point for someone starting out on their journey, it is still a great place to start. It gives you that initial indication, and it's a little bit easier sometimes in terms of access to data. Things are moving along rapidly with scope 3, so it is a journey, and we kind of recommend that even if you do start with spend-based data, you look to move on to product-specific data over time. But
Thank you very
certainly
much.
it's a place that you can start.
Thank you. And then just moving on to an AITrack specific question. You've got quite a few here, Rhiannon. Can you explain how AITrack supports supplier engagement at scale?
Yeah, so I think what's really important to understand is AITrack is a tool and this is why we try and make it as easy as possible, a tool which is not over-reliant on supplier data. So, the modelling that we're going to be doing, we know, as we said at the beginning, that supplier data is rare sometimes. It's not easy to get hold of. It's not easy to trust. So it's a tool that's not over-reliant on it. Helping companies sort of being able to identify the suppliers that are, the biggest contributors, that's the real power behind the tool. And to avoid boiling the ocean and going out and speaking to all of your suppliers at once, which is, very time consuming for a company, I'd say that's really how AITrack helps with that supplier engagement. And also, we can even imagine in the future having functionalities within the tool that are going to allow suppliers actually to upload their data directly into the tool. So it means that, even saving even more time for companies, instead of them having to, collect templates and different things from their suppliers.
Thank you very much. I think we're all waiting for the day when supply chain management and data collection can be made a lot more easier and efficient. Now, if we just go, and I know you presented two really great case studies, I just wondered if you could share with our audience today a little bit more on the details of either those you've mentioned or any from any other industry in which we've worked with.
Yeah, I mean, more details, I think for all of the clients that we work with, as I said, we work for some of the biggest world's leading brands in their industries. And I think what's important is that we are on that journey with the client, and we really do customize the approach. So it's really, you know, quite a premium service that we're offering, customizing the approach, and really, as I said, supporting them from the start where they are in terms of the data, you know. So, you know, every client is different in terms of what they're looking to do, how advanced they already are on their journey with Scope 3. But for all of the clients that we work with, you know, we are helping them get to a much better understanding of where they need to be intervening throughout their supply chain.
Thank you. And just thinking, you know, there's a few questions which have popped up as well with regards to the methodology, but if we look at the data sources, can you explain a little bit more about what is the data source for AITrack?
For sure. So obviously the starting point of any journey that we go on with our clients is going to be that data discovery phase. Where is the data going to come from that we're going to use to do our modelling? So the primary data is different from one client to another, but essentially we will understand at the beginning of our journey with the client what primary data they have available, and that primary data can be in multiple different formats. It could be a bill of material, it could be an EPD, it could be a supplier purchase order, a product catalogue. So we'll take that primary data, and in our modelling we'll basically complement that primary data with our AITrack database that I mentioned earlier, which covers the 500,000 activities, very specific activities at the activity level.
And noting that every different type of organization will probably have their data in different formats, how do we collect, integrate, and manage data from clients and suppliers?
Yes, it does vary a lot. Nice technical question there. Yeah, no, first of all, very important to understand. So we do accept multiple different formats of data. So as I mentioned earlier, it could be an EPD, it could be a bill of material, it could be a third-party LCA. And so basically what we'll do is, in order to sort of collect and integrate that data, we can do it in different ways. We can set up API, we can receive templates from our clients, but essentially what we're going to be doing is setting up what we call data pipelines. And those pipelines are going to automate all of the data connection, the processing, all of the quality control checks that we put into place, and the formatting. So it really is going to standardize the data, so it's aligned with the corporate inventory.
Thank you. And I think we've got time maybe just for one more final question. So when we think around reporting and future reporting needs, does AITrack, and I think you alluded to this earlier on with one of your examples as well, does AITrack support future reporting needs beyond carbon, such as impacts on water and biodiversity, something which has been a hot topic since COP30?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it is. It's completely designed to answer those regulatory requirements, to evolving standards such as TNFD. So yes, we are able to look at other elements of the environmental impact, and that's why we say, you know, we are looking at the environmental impact of products and not just carbon. So again, it really depends on what the clients need.
Thank you. Just very quickly, if you had one final message to say to our audience today, Rhiannon, I'll just start with you, and then Rebecca, if maybe something around Scope 3 data or any top tips, just very quickly in 10 seconds, what would your final message be today?
I'd say you're not alone. we know how complex Scope 3 is. I think, there are tools have evolved so much now. Technology is evolving as every day. So yeah, please reach out if you would like any more information or a demo of what the platform looks like, I'd be more than happy to set up a meeting.
Rebecca?
Yeah, I'd say, don't be scared of Scope 3. It can seem really overwhelming and daunting, but make a start somewhere, even if it's very basic, even if you're just looking at a few categories to start with. Make a start. It is a journey, and you'll be surprised how much you progress over the years.
Thank you, and thank you both for your time today, and to our audience for joining us. We hope that you found this useful, and if you've got any additional questions, see some coming up around like indication of costs and alignment with SBTi methodologies, please do get in touch and we can have a further conversation depending on where you are on your journey today. If you would like to find out any more about what we do and any other information, that can be accessed on our website, and we'll share that link with yourselves afterwards. But stay safe, have a wonderful rest of your day, and all the best on the run up to Christmas. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.